Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. His name is Poseidon Ho, and he is a Taiwanese founder and general partner of Outliers Fund, a research-driven venture fund and accelerator betting on the outliers who turn science fiction into scientific facts. Poseidon's early career was all about curiosity-driven innovation research, such as studying ant-inspired collective intelligence at MIT Media Lab, building Pokemon Go-like augmented reality gamifications for the 100th anniversary of San Diego Zoo Global, and launching Microsoft HoloLens in China for Microsoft Research Asia. Poseidon is known for building large-scale Lego cities for ant colonies and raising over $2 million in a week as a decentralized VC when he was a student at MIT. In 2020, two of Poseidon's invested and accelerated startups are filing IPO, and he is raising a $100 million Outliers Venture Fund. Poseidon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maggie and Brian. Thanks for having me. And hello, all Asian hustlers.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you on the show. So we're kind of curious too, Poseidon. What was your upbringing like?
Oh, okay. First of all, as Maggie has pretty much introduced most of my background, I'm currently 26 and I'm born and raised in Taiwan. About my upbringing, I grew up from a pretty normal family in southern Taiwan called Kaohsiung. And my dad was a soldier. My mom was a teacher. Although those sounds like the most non-creative occupations, but I'm really glad that my parents have always told me that I was different, encouraged me to think differently, and always told me that it's okay to be different. When I was 6, I was actually diagnosed with ADHD and Tourette syndrome. Mm-hmm. Many of my friends didn't notice that when I learned how to hide it or socialize after schools. But my parents didn't let me take any kind of medicine as my doctor suggested. Mm-hmm. Instead, they allowed me to spend all of my entire 6 years of elementary school across 5 different sports teams. Mm-hmm. And as opposed to sitting in a classroom for study. Mm-hmm. And another 6 years of high school at a breakdance club out of school.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So before college, my entire student career was considered a little bit out of track and definitely far from being a good student nor straight A student. Mm-hmm. The reason why I went to NTU, National Taiwan University, or the 4 colleges afterwards was purely because I wanted to explore the world, as I didn't get much chance to travel or visit other countries when I was little. But luckily, I came across some very generous advisors and professors when I went to college who guided me into the world of curiosity-based research and let me spend my early career, as Maggie mentioned, at the MIT, San Diego Zoo, and Microsoft Research Asia. I think those research labs have definitely shaped my worldview on everything. And since then, I've considered myself to be a research scientist. I don't know how I ended up as a venture capitalist. Maybe we can talk a little bit more later.
Yeah, I mean, all the credit goes to yourself for being so ambitious and your parents for believing in you. Not to generalize, but most Asian parents would be like, let's conform, let's make sure our kid is going to be like everyone else. But your parents told you from a young age that it's okay to be different, and that's powerful. We can see that how that really shaped you to become the person you are today. And what you're doing is really impressive, so congratulations on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I feel like I resonate with that a lot because I feel like my parents also, when we go out to, see the doctor when I was younger, they didn't make me take the medicine as well. And they, encouraged me to, you could fight it. And I like how you took that experience and you were able to, use what you were given and that information that you were provided and kind of like grow from it, and really take it in and really grow from it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious too. At what point of your young career did you realize that, hey, maybe I do have this potential to do something different and do something big. Because what you're doing is really big, you know, and a normal person will be very scared about that at such a young age. Like, how'd you get into what you're doing today at such a young age?
Oh, I would say I wasn't this ambitious when I was at elementary school all the way to high school or my first college at NTU. I got changed when I went to MIT. Pretty much was 4 years ago in 2016. At first, I immediately created a Slack called #Outliers. Was the motivation to discuss some radical research topics with some of my best friends. And by end of 2016, we onboarded 88 students, radical minds from different departments, and created many channels such as #AIML, #ARVR, and so on. And originally, this special interest group that I created was supposed to be a research discussion only. However, in one of the channels called #blockchain, some of the students started to discuss different token investment opportunities. That channel was so active to the extent that they tried to encourage or nominate me as a GP to syndicate a little fund.
Okay.
Yeah, crypto fund. Back then, I didn't know what is GP LP as well. But after they told me that there's this 2% management fee and 20% carry interest, I got it to be a little bit hyped. And I decided to give it a shot by creating a Bitcoin and Ethereum wallet first, and asked everyone to transfer their investment capital to these wallets if they want to invest. Didn't have any legal entity. We didn't have any contract or fund license. But within a week, boom, slightly over 5 million worth of cryptos were transferred to my wallet.
Wow.
And it was totally beyond my expectation and confidence level. So I immediately hashtag everyone in the Slack by saying that basically I wanted to give up the entire management fee as I didn't want to be perceived as a professional GP. And I also wouldn't view them as just a limited liability partner. So I asked them, could we go by how we discussed research back in the early days, to invest as like a decentralized community. Basically, I'm trying to do deal sourcing, due diligence, investment decision, as well as exit and return strategies all together with everyone.
That's awesome.
And after that message, slightly over 3 million capital were pulled out. Basically, because some people are very frankly, honestly upfront that they were just token investment opportunity, as opposed to wanting to learn in the frontier. But 2 million was left with 20 investors who are still willing to learn and be fully engaged in this investment process. So
it's awesome. Yeah, to take a step back for our listeners that don't know what a GP is or LP is or a management fee, can you briefly kind of go over what it means?
Yeah, so GP means a general partner. In most of the VC, PE, venture capital, and private equity, I think it means the fund managers who have sole decision powers to decide which projects to invest and basically to make investment calls, pull the trigger. And when this fund turns out to be profitable, the GP will usually be given 20% carry interest at the end, at the exit of the fund. And across the entire fund life, usually the GP altogether or the fund will be given 2 to 3% management fee per year.
Awesome. What is an LP?
LP, limited partners, you can perceive as investors. I guess it was called limited partners because after they invest, they was not expect to do anything else but sit there and wait for the return.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that gives a good explanation to our listeners. You know, general partner means that you have a lot more control, a lot more responsibilities for good or for bad. You know, you get to make all the decisions.
Yeah.
LP usually means you're a limited partner. You don't really have much of a decision on everything. At the same time, you're not completely liable for the entire process of the investment cycle. Management fee is your payout for, you know, putting the time, effort, and work into making this fund work for the investments. Kind of curious, Poseidon, how did you build your current team? How did you find these people? Did they find you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now, just give our listeners more perspective. I think your team is amazing. Your
Mm-hmm.
reach, it's worldwide. Like some of the most powerful people in the world. How did you build this team around this vision that you had?
Originally, as mentioned a little bit, it was just a group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like 4 of us met at a dinner when I was doing N-inspired collective intelligence research, while others are researching battery science or rocket or other radical topics.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But we found out at a moment, I used to maintain a list of over 200 experiments that I couldn't answer myself. But those students, they were undergraduates back then. They were able to solve my questions, like 5 to 20 questions right away without any previous background in biology, neuroscience. So I was pretty inspired and just wanted to stay in touch with them. So I created that Slack. But till end of 2016, when it grew to 88 people, mostly are undergraduate students back in Boston. Many of them were not invited by myself, but people started to invite different people they know. We didn't have any standard or criteria, but in retrospect, if I were really to put a tag or to say what's different about these people, I would say, first of all, they are super radical minds. Secondly, they have super solid hands in terms of execution. And they also have a very unique stories, each of them.
That's powerful.
Yeah, I love that. I'm very curious, how have you seen yourself grow since, like, let's say starting when you
4 years ago.
4 years ago when you started that Slack channel up until now? How have you seen yourself grow, as well as Outliers Fund?
Maybe I'll give a slightly little more context about how the Outliers Fund have grown,
mm-hmm.
and to follow with my personal growth. After we collected that 2 million altogether, we collectively read 880 papers and we rated over 600 of them.
Wow.
In the end, we picked 32 to
mm-hmm.
allocate these to 2 million, all the way from 2016 to 2017. And from 2017 to 2018, we found out 32 out of 32 projects we invested were all listed on exchange. So we exit them at 32.4 million with around 16x return in 2 years. That's from the outside perspective. From the inside, I would say we didn't feel solid. If you ask me some of the tokens, why they return at 70x
mm-hmm.
or over 50x, we couldn't explain at all.
Mm-hmm.
We found out many of them wasn't about fundamental or technical analysis, but purely driven by sentiment. So we didn't see ourselves bringing much value to those projects, even though they gave us a pretty high return. So in 2019, which is last year, we decided to go back to those startups we invest or advise and recruit them, put together an accelerator called Outliers Accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
And the first batch started with 9 teams, focusing on blockchain or decentralized stack of technologies in general.
Mm-hmm.
And last year was pretty well. Hard to imagine this if it happened in this year with pandemic. But last year we brought our batch startups to 12 cities.
Wow.
For roadshows, 2 in the United States, 2 in Middle East, and 8 in Asia. 6 of them collectively raised over 50 million. Wow. With an average of 3.5x average valuation growth. As Maggie has briefly touched in the introduction, that 2 of them are currently filing IPO
mm-hmm.
this year. So this entire process of running this actually nonprofit Outliers Accelerator has given us a very grounded experience of hiding between or in the back of many serial entrepreneurs to
mm-hmm.
learn how they think, how they act. Mm-hmm. And especially this year when it hit the pandemic, how they shift their focus and direction.
Yeah,
and
love that too. And kind of curious too, how'd you come up with the name Outlier? It's really cool.
Yeah. And what does it mean to you personally?
it has many layers of meanings. I would say after 4 years, I still consider it as the most accurate or my favorite name if I were to name the fund or the entire community again. At first, it wasn't called Outliers Fund. It was called #Outlier, as our logo shows. The hashtag basically was meant to be a variable that we don't want to be restricted to any specific type of outlier. When we are 88 people student group on Slack, we have students coming from a mathematics, physics, aerospace, management backgrounds. Pretty much cover, I think, nearly all the departments at MIT and Harvard. And I think most of us were not considered as straight A student in the mainstream, but someone who were just doing their own research or their ventures, being perceived mostly as out of track by our professors or the mainstream. And many of these type of people with radical mind and solid hand sometimes could be considered
Outliers.
Outliers as like positively beyond the street standard deviation.
Yep.
But before they got the mainstream's recognition, most of the time they could also be viewed as negatively out of the street standard deviation. It's really about perspective, whether they were given enough chances, enough platform and exposure to the resource that they might need. So the aspiration is we try to be a base for these outliers in terms of investment acceleration.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that the name Outlier is really cool. And what you try to do with the name Outlier is also really cool. You know, invest into mathematics, physics, people who don't think about the norm really and don't stay within normacy, for a lack of a better term. So I think that's a really cool concept.
I think many of us are people who are dare to walk the walk that really or none of anyone have traveled. Or an even more extreme statement, I would say, is many of them are outliers, those who are on an extreme outer edge of what is statistically possible.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
I feel like I read a lot of articles about just like the Asian community and Asian founders in general. I'm very curious to see what your perspective is on this. How, we always hear about Asian founders continuing to be underfunded, and Asian startups continuing to be underfunded. I love to know like what your perspective is on that topic and how, if Outliers Fund is, helping in any areas of that field.
For this, I wanted to give very straightforward example. I don't know whether it's biased or not, but we are currently looking at 2 space startups. Both of their founder and CEO, one of them is from Israel, one of them is from Taiwan. And during our interview process, nearly all of our partners noticed that the Israel one can speak about himself and his venture, pretty much an idea for now, way beyond what he is currently at, what he is at this moment. Probably 3 to 5x or 3 to 5 years beyond the stage in terms of satellite. On the other side, we spotted a team. I luckily spotted this team back in Taiwan this past summer. It is a team of, I really view them as an outlier, going all the way up from Taiwan. As 4 students, they spend their high school career at a rocket or jet propulsion laboratory when they were a high school student, and they focus on building spherical motors. Got to be recognized the Intel-backed International Science Fair second prize, and 2 of them got the chance to be invited to NTU, National Taiwan University. But they were so humble that I think they have pretty much built the world probably first commercialized spherical motor, which is a key of many space components or satellites. They even got in touch with Elon Musk. They, like, all of our partners' perspective after learning their pitch was that, why didn't you shine a little bit more? Why don't you spend the equivalent amount of energy talking about your branding, your IP, your patents, your marketing? I guess I cannot speak for all, but many Asians that I've met in the past 4 years turns out to when they like 100, they would like to introduce themselves or of their venture or their background as 70, 80. It probably rooted from, as we discussed earlier, about their upbringing, about how their parents would usually introduce them and how they were usually perceived when they're in a student career.
I mean, just to focus a little bit more of the podcast on yourself. Do you have moments where you're stressed out a lot and you have self-doubt that maybe this is way over your head? And how do you overcome those? And how do you believe in yourself so much?
Yeah, there were 2 times during last year that I think I nearly broke down or already broke down. One time period is 60 days in January, February, before we launched the Kickup Bootcamp of Outliers Accelerator. The second time frame was August and September before we launched the 300 people demo day. The first demo day of Outliers Accelerator. Because at the beginning, we were just a bunch of students who, after failing to build and launch nearly 10 different products, we decided to build an accelerator.
Big task.
It was pretty hype. By end of 2018, it was around the moment that we pretty much burned out all of our capital. The accelerator idea was actually the 11th iteration idea, which we classify as the last shot for ourselves. At January and February last year, many of our members started to doubt whether they want to associate themselves with this accelerator, because the 8 core members, none of us have successfully built any company, exit any company, or enter any accelerator. So one by one, pull out from this accelerator before we even launch. But we already signed 9 startups and booked like all of their ticket hotels and recruited 20 mentors. The Kickup Bootcamp was okay because it was just 50 people, but it's still enough to stress me out. And the same scenario around the summer. So last year, this is something that I've never told our founders. Like during June, July, August, I was hiding myself somewhere in China, that I refused to go back to the United States to face the fact that I needed to host like a final demo day to close this batch 1 accelerator program. It took me around, I think, over 100 days to overcome the fear and admit that I need to host a final demo day by myself full time. So when I got back to the United States, it was pretty much 60 days left. Those 60 days, I pretty much slept one every 2 to 3 days. But very luckily, many of the early members of that Slack group, remember we have 88 students. I came up with a deal, which is like welcome everyone to come as a volunteer. I don't have much budget, but I can sponsor the flight and accommodation at least. If you are willing to volunteer and help support the demo day, which in exchange will allow you to get to know a lot of serial entrepreneurs and investors on October 30th last year, which turns out to have slightly over 20 of my best friends from everywhere in the world. I think those 20 people flew all the way 12 different cities. Some of them flew from Taiwan to San Francisco just for a 1-day event and then flew back.
I love your network and your friendship and the dedication. It's so powerful, that they believe in your vision. It's really hard touching. I know how stressful things can be, especially, sometimes you're like, wow, like this is more than what I bit off, or as you're planning things, you're too optimistic. It happens to us all the time too.
Yeah.
It's like, let's go have this event. And then it just goes super big. Be a common theme. But I think it's just the part about the experience, of just doing bigger things in life. Because when you look back a couple of years from now, you're not going to regret that you didn't do it. You're going to be glad that you did do it, because now it tells you a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. And as after the first time, like hosting like a demo day again should be very easy.
Oh yeah.
We'll be here to help you too, so keep that in mind.
now that you've done it, it's you've learned so much from it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Has Outliers Fund been impacted by COVID-19 in any way? And what's your future plan or direction going forward?
Okay. I would say as was pretty decentralized, spread across over 10 cities in the world right now. Since we were funded 3 to 4 years ago, we have been using Discord and GitHub as our team management, and we have never had a physical office. So when the COVID-19 hit, I didn't see much negative impact on our operation. Instead, it actually accelerated many aspects.
Mhm.
It was when me and some of the members went back to Taiwan this past summer that we realized that, maybe we can use this year to slow down on investment and the accelerator program, but to raise a bigger. So we're currently raising $100 million Outliers Venture Fund.
If our
going
listeners
forward.
hearing this, if you guys want to support the fund, please reach out to us.
Thank you.
More money for the fund and make a difference in the world.
By the way, this fund will not be restricted to blockchain. I think blockchain will be a small fraction of it, but this fund, we are planning to go all in the direction of Outliers, which will bet on a lot of space travel, even time travel.
I love it. I love how
That's
big
amazing.
you're thinking.
Yeah.
Time travel. I think the first we heard this on the podcast. I'll listen to time travel. Love it. I love it.
We have like one inbounding deal flow that his research paper just got accepted to a time travel conference.
Wow.
It's unpublished yet, but will be published in 1 month or 2.
Yeah. No,
Some big goal.
I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say to it.
Poseidon, what advice can you give to an aspiring entrepreneur,
Especially Asian entrepreneurs.
especially Asian entrepreneurs?
Especially Asian entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
This is the Asian Hustle Network podcast.
I would say, especially for Asian entrepreneurs, 3 keywords: think big, start small, and move fast.
Mm.
As I realized that many Asian entrepreneurs, especially those that I met in Taiwan
Mhm.
or Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen,
Mhm.
many of them didn't have the worldview or global mindset when they started their first venture.
Mhm.
Will pretty much improve when they started the second one, third one, or after they got to pension stage later. But don't forget to start small, incrementally, and iterate. That's about the speed. I think starting a company in Asia, I don't know whether it's correct, but the feeling
Mhm.
that I have when I was in Shenzhen, say,
Yes.
for example, compare with Silicon Valley,
Mhm.
I think the iteration cycle and speed is 3x
Mhm.
more than how I feel in the United States. And especially many cities or countries didn't have the antitrust policy. So you either go big or go home.
I love how you emphasize the key difference too.
Mhm.
And I feel like business people in the United States have grown to the point where, they think the innovation only happens in the United States. I think from a world view, like a lot of places are catching up and they're catching up fast.
Mhm.
And the talent around the world is insane. That's one of the keys is to, work really hard because, people around the world are doing their best too, and they're innovating in a really fast pace. If we have to keep on innovating ourselves back at home, and especially in the United States.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can totally echo on that.
Well, Poseidon, how can our listeners learn more about you on social media
And support your fun.
and support your fund?
That's the most important. Just kidding. First of all, feel free to connect with me anywhere on Facebook, chat, LinkedIn. My email is p@outlier. I'm very active on email, and I respond to all the emails that I've received in the past.
Mike, can you say your email again? Because it cut out. Is it proper quick?
Yes. My email is p@outliers.fund.
Awesome.
And outliers.fund is also the URL for our website.
Awesome. And for our listeners too, you guys can also reach out to me. I'm also a venture partner at Outlier Fund.
Yes.
If you need to chat to Poseidon or chat more about how the fund works, we're always here to help and support and amplify Asian voices around the world.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Poseidon.
Yeah, thank you, Poseidon.
Of course.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.